Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome to the latest episode of the Banterflix Movie Review Show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing Scream 6, which was released in cinemas last week. And our pick of the streams is Alice Darling, which is available to rent or buy on various VOD platforms now. So that's what we've lined up for you tonight. Joining me in the studio this week is Danny Brown from the Fight Club, NI.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, Danny. We haven't had you on for a while. It's great to have you for the new series. So we're going to talk a lot about a couple of movies tonight. There is a small matter of the Oscars, of course. So before we get stuck into chatting about this week's releases, let's have a look at some movie news.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of their memories, their emotions, even the skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be your only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
Wow, that was really good.
So that's a look at Everything Everywhere All at Once. Danny, the Oscar-winning Everything Everywhere All at Once. I know we're going to be talking about An Irish Goodbye because we have to congratulate and celebrate its success because we want to showcase local talent. But I think we have to start with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't think anybody really anticipated that it would come home with seven Oscars. Yep. Mm-hmm. Not just the best picture, but we also seen acting nods as well, editing, screenplay. I loved the film.
Yes.
Key thing, have you seen it? Were you a fan? And are you surprised to see it coming home with so many Oscars?
No, I'm not. I think the last time I was on, we talked about Banshees of Inisherin, but at the same time, it was like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, they were two of my favorite films at that time, and they still very much are. So I feel like they deserved everything they got, but it's one of the few years where I'm like, regardless of who really got it, I think I would have been happy, so I'm really happy Everything Everywhere All at Once it got it, but had Banshees got it, I would have also been really happy, so I don't think it's one. I didn't actually watch it this year. I haven't actually watched it since the Shape of Water one, because I'm too old and I want to go to bed. But I did watch obviously all the clips and read all the news about it, and I'm really glad that Everything Everywhere All at Once got the recognition I felt it deserved.
Unlike you, I did sit up. Now, very important tip, viewers, I had a little nap for a couple of hours beforehand because, this is not my first rodeo. It's starting at midnight. I'm going to be sitting up till like 3 o'clock, half 3. As delighted as I was to see the people picking up and the films picking up awards, I think the ceremony itself this year was a little bit dull. We can't have Will Smith showing up and slapping people every year, and they kind of leaned into that. Jimmy Kimmel leaned into that quite a lot with his gags throughout the night, which worked. I think the ceremony was a little bit dry, a little bit dull, but that's one thing. But coming back to what you mentioned, anybody that won, I was delighted for. We think of Jamie Lee Curtis, Ke Huy Quan as well, the first Goonie to pick up an Oscar. My only reservation, I'm sorry, Brendan, because I love you. I've met you. I got to meet you when you were in Belfast. As much as I loved his performance in The Whale, I wasn't a massive fan of that film, but I wanted Austin Butler to win, or even our very own, Ireland's Paul Mescal. He can sell a Cookstown sausage like nobody else, but I don't know. I mean, it's that sense of it's his time, Brendan Fraser's time, and he's been out, he's been away, and now he's back front and centre with an Oscar-winning performance. I just wasn't a fan of the film, and I loved Austin Butler and Elvis.
I haven't seen Elvis yet, so I can't really make that call, but I really enjoyed The Whale. I I love how it was put together. I love that it's an adaptation of a stage play, and you can very much tell that through the way it's put together. And I thought not just Brendan Fraser's performance throughout it, but I thought all the performances throughout were fantastic. And I understand people's criticisms of it, but I also feel that you can look at it the alternative way from the criticisms. And yeah, I had a great time. And again, anything with like a father-child relationship sort of gets to me. So that especially, I was like, no, I really, the Renaissance is happening, and it's well and truly like being finished, topped off with that Oscar win for him. So I'm really glad that he got it.
Well, we've got to say he's going to be in a Scorsese film later this year, so maybe the reconnaissance isn't over just yet. It might not have peaked. And I know we've already mentioned Everything Everywhere All at Once, but Michelle Yeoh, I thought she gave an absolutely fantastic speech. Brilliant. There was a lot of great speeches. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis, you're part of the Fright Club, so of course she is one of, if not the definitive Scream Queen. And it's great to see her, and she talked about that in her acceptance speech, that she's someone who works and has worked and cut her teeth in genre filmmaking, and that award was for everybody that helped her get to that position. We talked about Michelle Yeoh, about the fact that a woman of her age being kind of cast aside by so many producers and directors, now being given this opportunity in this film to be front and centre. Great speeches all around. As I said, the ceremony itself was a little bit dull, but yes, ceremony, speeches, but speeches full of heart.
Yeah, and there was a donkey, so that was nice too. But yes, I loved whenever Jamie Lee Curtis made reference to her mum and dad as well. I was just like, this was really nice. And you're right, all the speeches and stuff. My favourite moment was when Indiana Jones and Short Round got to hug again, and that just filled me with so much joy. Being a massive Indiana Jones fan, and still then also made me remember there's an Indiana Jones movie out again this year, so I'm buzzing. I'm absolutely buzzing.
I was a little bit teary-eyed at that, but I put that down to the fact that it was nearly 4 o'clock in the morning when I was watching that. Yeah. But I don't know. I do cry at the drop of a hat. Look, I've already mentioned it. I think it's time we talked about An Irish Goodbye. BAFTA winning, Oscar winning. But before we do, let's have a look at the film.
Sorry about your mother.
Aye.
I told you, I'm staying here to look after the farm.
I'm not getting stuck here for the rest of my life. Mother and you.
How's Larkin dealing with it all?
He'll be fine.
Oh, I almost forgot. I think it's a list of things that she wanted to do, before the illness took her.
I'm not going anywhere until Mum's done every single wish.
Right. We do Mum's list, and then we go to Auntie Margaret's. Deal?
Deal.
How many's on there?
100.
100? Larkin, no! Come here!
So that's a look at Tom Berkeley and Ross White's Oscar-winning short An Irish Goodbye. It was also screened on BBC the night of the awards, and as we record tonight, it's still available on iPlayer to watch. So if you haven't seen it, you can still seek it out. And there is some screenings of it with the talent, the Oscar-winning talent, because I think it's important to big up local talent when they're successful. I know the Northern Ireland has previous in this. We had Terry George winning with The Shore quite a few years ago. I got to hold that Oscar. Maybe I'll get to hold this Oscar. I don't know. But what did you think of An Irish Goodbye?
Really, really enjoyed it. I caught it on, I did stay up to watch that on BBC One on Sunday night, and I really, really enjoyed it. I had heard really good things about it beforehand, so I went in and it exceeded my expectations of it. I thought the story was brilliant, just a really nice, sort of simple, fairly simple story, but there's so much depth and emotion to it, and again, a lot about, as I said before, anyone with family really gets right to my heart. And I thought the humour was fantastic as well with Father O'Shea and James Martin. I mean, what a fantastic moment for him, not just winning an Oscar, but on his 31st birthday, and everyone's singing happy birthday to him, getting all these like celebrities and people that he probably looks up to singing happy birthday. What an absolute moment. And yeah, the film itself it really, really deserves the award.
I was pleasantly surprised by the film. I have to admit, when something starts that role and suddenly you start to hear so much fanfare, you get a bit worried about, is it going to meet your expectations? Like you, really pleasantly surprised. It's a film that unashamedly wears its heart on its sleeves. Regular viewers will know I will always back those kind of films. And it was a bit dusty at home at times when I was watching that short, I don't know, maybe I just haven't cleaned around the house. I'll not blame my lovely wife, because that's my duties to do the hoovering. It was a bit dusty. And yeah, like you, when there's those things, particularly, I suppose, you bring your own knowledge and your own experiences, anything that deals at the minute with grief, I always find tough going. And this deals with that, two brothers reconnect and after the death of their mother. James Martin is great. I mean, I've seen him before in Owen Cleland's Ups and Downs, which I think is available possibly to watch on YouTube. And similarly, Jim McMorrow's The Upside, which is just dealing with similar subject matter. And I would recommend seeking those out. So yes, I think all round great. And we should rightfully, I think you'll agree, Danny, be championing local talent when they succeed at the highest level.
100%.
So, yep, that's us. We could talk so much about the Oscars.
Oh, yeah.
There's loads we could talk about. We only have half hour, so I think we'll move on and get stuck into this week's big review.
I had this secret. There's a darkness inside of me. It followed me here. And it's gonna keep coming for us. We share a certain history. This isn't like any other ghost face. What is this place? A shrine. We've got to lure him in. We execute him.
So that's a look at Scream 6. It was released in cinemas last week. Now we're getting a chance to chat about it. So, Danny, this is following on from the reboot that we had last year. The directorial duo behind Ready or Not is returning at the helm. Now we have the Carpenter sisters moving to New York. Ghostface, unsurprisingly, has followed. We don't know who's behind the mask. This time, though, we don't have Sydney. We have some returning characters for the likes of Kirby from Scream 4, some people may be familiar with, but I feel I need to start by mentioning the fact you just told me this before we started to record, Danny. Mm-hmm. As someone who's involved with the Fright Club, you know, a group all about appreciation for horror, mm-hmm. You've only seen this and the first Scream, and you only seen the first Scream because you guys screened it pretty recently.
Screening? Yep. So, Gav is the Scream guy. Gav is the hardcore Scream fan. He is the hardcore horror guy, and I am the softcore horror guy. So I do really enjoy my horror, but I didn't grow up with it the same way that Gav did. And for me, Scream, I actually thought I had watched Scream 1 before we screened it. But it turns out that every point of reference I had for Scream was as a result of Scary Movie. Every scene that played out, I went, this isn't how I play. Oh, Scary Movie. Oh, Scary Movie again. Yeah. So actually, I really enjoyed getting to watch Scream 1 when we did the screening with everyone else. And then going into Scream 6, there's obviously a lot I haven't seen because I haven't seen 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I don't feel that ruined my enjoyment of Scream 6 because there's so much context and backstory provided by the characters throughout this film. You don't necessarily have to have watched any of the previous ones because they give you enough. Now, it does make me want to go back and watch all the rest, but I didn't need to have seen them before watching this. And actually, I think that was a really good thing for anyone who maybe hasn't seen the previous films.
I do love Scream. I think Scream's a really clever, inventive, slick horror movie. Mm-hmm. Wes Craven did something similar a couple of years previous with Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Scream was something that was much more acceptable and, more importantly, a box office success. I have said on record, as much as I love Scream and I have a soft spot for the sequels, it should have been a great one and done.
Okay.
I haven't went to see Scream 6. We got to see it at the new cinema here in Belfast, the Avenue. Myself and Joe, who was on last week, we were both guests. Went in, didn't really know what to expect. Didn't really feel, I liked Scream 5, didn't love it. Sitting down to watch, I think there's a lot of things to admire about it. The directorial duo behind it. This time round, they're not too busy holding a candle to what Wes Craven did and thinking, what would Wes do? They're trying to do their own thing. So we get great sequences. We get a great opening sequence, very clever opening sequence. There's a great sequence, and this is not spoiler because it's in the trailer. There's a great scene on the subway.
Yes.
There's a great scene involving a bedroom and a ladder, which I think is really well executed horror.
Yep.
I just have to say the revelation, without going into spoilers, because there will be people at this point who haven't seen it. We're not going to spoil it. Yep. I think the revelations are underwhelming. I've mentioned the fact we have Kirby coming back. I think that's ultimately a bit pointless. It's fan service for fan service sake. That's my general ramblings, apologies, about the film. Having watched Scream so recently for the first time, and maybe Scary Movie over all those years, generally, you know, what did you think of this film in comparison to the first film?
I really enjoyed the steps. So what I really enjoyed about watching the first one is obviously the tropes that it plays with when it comes to horror movies and slasher movies. And even I said at the time, I was like, there's the rent in the video store. And I was like, this is like Clerks. And next thing, there was a stand for Clerks. So I really enjoyed all that there. I love that there's nods to cinema, not necessarily just slasher too. And then I love that with 6, it picks up and it starts to pick at franchising. So I thought that was a really good sort of move on in terms of how movies play out now. You know, as you say, they're not just one and done anymore, and they're not just sequels anymore. They're now franchises, and this one really picks up on that. And again, from what I've heard about 5, it was the requel thing that they're really sort of tore into. So I really enjoy that. I think that's really clever and really works. I like that, is it Samantha Carpenter is Billy's daughter, and I like that I like that it kind of picks on that there from 1. And yeah, like I love that there's fan service in there, and because of the context provided, I could appreciate that fan service. I know the fans will probably dig it even more than I did, but because there's enough context given, I could appreciate those characters appearing. And yeah, you're right, the last kind of act and the kind of reveal, I didn't expect. I had my theories, and my theory wasn't right. But my partner Una got it, and she was just like, ugh, it was kind of, yeah, you could kind of tell, and it was a bit underwhelming. And yeah, you're right, that last kind of act, I think, is just for the sake of it. But overall, I really enjoyed it. That subway sequence that you mentioned is brilliant. I thought that was fantastic, and the opening sequence, and then the like corner shop bodega sequence as well, really good. And sort of, I think from what I've heard, the first time we see Ghostface use a gun, like normally the gun's not used until the reveal at the end, but this time Ghostface wielding the shotgun. Not a spoiler because it's in the trailer, but yeah, getting to see Ghostface use a shotgun was like, oh, okay.
I said this last year when Scream 5 was out. I said, look, I kind of feel like I'm done with Scream. As much as I love the franchise, I can always go back and look at those films. At that time, Scream 6 had already been greenlit. Now we are here talking about Scream 6. I'm a little bit underwhelmed, but I think ultimately, I think it's a little bit of an improvement upon 5, and that the fact that it's trying to do more of its own thing. I still feel it's like there's nothing left. There's no meat on this carcass. It's literally just the bare bones are there.
Yeah.
But as we record, Scream 7 is already greenlit. So we know there's going to be a new trilogy, because everything has to be a trilogy now. We have to have a new Exorcist movie. It can't just be another movie. It's a new trilogy. You've got the other 4 films to go back and look at now. Are you excited about the thought of another outing for the franchise?
I think because I'm fairly new to it, I am. I was chatting with Una after we came out of the cinema, and we were sort of saying like how it sort of finished up, and do you think they'll come back? And obviously there's enough there, I think, that they left for audiences to go, okay, yeah, I'm ready for this, or maybe not, like yourself, to not be ready for it. But I feel, because I'm excited to go back and watch the rest, that by the time I've kind of marathon those, I'll probably be ready for 7. So yeah, I'm excited. I think, again, because I'm kind of new to it, and I've kind of got this new childlike wonder for Scream and Ghostface. You know, for me, it's no longer just the Scary Movie what's up version. I've got like this killer version that I'm gonna properly sink myself into now. And then, like I say, come 7, I'll either be exhausted with it or I'll be ready for it.
Here's the thing, Danny. I'm still gonna go see it. You know, as much as I'll sit and go, oh, I don't really want another Scream movie, it's got my money already. That's the problem with franchises. But on that note, I think we shall move on, and we'll get stuck into this week's Pick of the Streams.
So for my birthday,
We're going up north for a week.
you're gonna come, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it just came up. Just came up. Just came up. Remember this thing I told you about? That sales thing? Turns out now they do need me to go.
Why?
Just, I came up, I guess.
What am I gonna do without you? My beautiful cow.
We are so glad that you came.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday to you!
We just really want you to relax.
Relax in what way?
My beautiful cow.
Hey, baby. Is everything okay?
What's going on?
So I think I'm gonna have to leave early.
When did he become more important to you than us?
Alice. Darling.
I lied to him. He has every right to be angry.
Lied about what?
About being here.
There's my girl.
I didn't know you were coming.
Well, I'm sure Alice will explain it all later.
So that's a look at Mary Nighy's Alice Darling. It's available on various VOD platforms now to rent or buy. Not Danny, as I told you before we started to record, available on Prime. We will keep that for another week. But we have Anna Kendrick's. She's in a difficult situation. She's in a problematic relationship where there's a lot of coercive control going in. I didn't know what to expect when I sat down to watch this. And I always say this from the outset, in these type of films, I'm very cautious. It's two guys talking about this. And I think it's a film that's made by, directed by a woman, written by a woman, and is a largely female ensemble cast. So I think it's interesting what perspectives we can give to the film, but yeah, I think it's that sense of we had intended to have another guest on this week. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to come into wasn't able to attend the recording this week, so it's just yourself. And I'm glad it's your lovely self. But I think that does add a level to this film, the sense that as we're talking now, we're two guys, and I'm aware of that. But what did you make of this film?
I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it, actually. It's one of those ones where it's put together in such a way that we are on that anxiety roller coaster with Alice, and we have so many expectations of how it's going to play out that when we ultimately get to the end of it, I feel people are going to love or hate it. I feel like people are going to either be like, okay, that's, yeah, fair enough, or they're going to be like, what? Why is it played out like this? Why have they not got their justice? You know, I feel like there's going to be people who, I think it's going to be, the end of it is going to be very Marmite for people. They're going to love it or they're going to hate it because it's not going to play out to what we ultimately expect from it.
We know going in, and I think people will have this preconception, it's going to be something along the lines of Sleeping with the Enemy, which is much more of an outright thriller.
Yes.
And you mentioned about you find it tense. It is a very tense film, and it's the noise of a text coming through or a phone ring. That's where the tension comes from this film. And we see that all from Anna Kendrick. That great idea of show me, don't tell me, and how she's able to kind of, with her acting, I don't know, there's no other way of putting this, but just her use of skill as an actor, being able to show us without telling us exactly what's going on in her character's head. There is another plot point of a search for a missing woman. I don't essentially know if the two really work together. No. I think it's an interesting idea what they're trying to do and kind of give a way of being able to get a character to open up and kind of getting her something that she can realise the situation she's in. I don't know if it works, but you can see that someone who's in this abusive relationship, and there's a key line in the film where he's never hit me. But you see that the trauma and the damage that he's doing to this character psychologically. We have a character in Simon who appears just like in everybody, but he's probably more terrifying because of that and this nature of this constant checking up on people. And we see very early on where she has to construct an elaborate lie just to get away with her group of friends. So I don't know, I mean, I'm not really giving you a question, Danny, but that sense I found this in a weird way, a more terrifying watch. And I know terrifying is probably a bit over dramatic. Coming back to what you said about tension. There was more tension and more terror for me watching this than watching Scream 6.
Yep, I completely agree. I completely agree, because it's the reality of it. It's the reality of that domestic abuse situation, and we're getting to witness it through Alice's eyes. You know, we are, as I said, we are in that with her. And like you said, before watching the film, I read like a short synopsis to kind of get an idea of what it was about, and read domestic abuse situation, so I knew a bit about what to expect going into it. But there's a scene towards the start whenever she's planning her lie, and she's going over the lines to herself looking in a window while he's in getting them coffee. And that, to me, if you didn't know what the film was about, if you went in blind to it, you'd probably be like, what's that about? What's going on? And then as the film plays out, you kind of start twigging on. But it's because it's so real, and that's what makes it, for me, scarier than any Ghostface film. You know, it's because it's far too real, it's far too common. And yeah, as you say, the coercive control and him saying it. I didn't think he was a nice guy. I didn't like his vibe at all straight from the start. I was like, oh, this guy's a bit of a pre-Watershed program word. But yeah, like I didn't like him. I didn't like his vibe, and obviously the friends don't either. But it's as the film plays out, they learn actually how much their sort of vibe check on him was true. And yeah, like it really, it's the scene when she comes out of the lake, and she's like kind of finally coming out with a lot of stuff to her friend. That's the moment where I was like, oh my god, like this is, you know, that rattled me.
Yeah, and I've got to say a lot of credit to Anna Kendrick's performance, because it's not a showy performance. We've talked about the Oscars earlier on. It's not, at no point when I was watching this film did I feel a for-your consideration moment. I think she does a great performance in this, and she makes the film work.
Yeah, the coping mechanism that she uses in the film, I shall not reveal, do you know what would spoil, but there's a coping mechanism she uses, and that there, you're like, yeah, that says it all. And again, it's just wee moments throughout the film where you see her doing this way of coping, and you're like, that's not okay. That way, if you saw somebody doing that in real life, you'd go check on them. You'd be concerned. So yeah, really fantastic performance.
It hits more of a punch, the fact that it is very realistic in what it's trying to do. But I think it's a film that would be a great tool for programmers. A lot of feminist film festivals, films kind of showcase as a platform for discussion. Here is a film, I know it's done the festival circuit, but a film for a great use of the arts as a jumping on point for a very important, very relevant discussion that we have going right now. Just your own thoughts on that?
I think it would be a way of opening up a conversation with maybe someone you had concerns about who was in a similar situation, and yeah, it's impactful without being melodramatic, as you say. So
yeah. So there we go. So that's our two films for this week. So this week we've talked about Scream 6 and Alice Darling. Let's have a look at what we're going to be reviewing next week.
I know what I've done. Bad things. Terrible, awful, murderous things. I want to be loved from as many people as possible. But truth is, I'm not really a good person.
Detective Superintendent Schenk. We need to know where he is.
Look, I know he's in prison.
Except he's not in prison.
Of course he's not.
So that's a look at Pearl and Luther, The Fallen Sun. We'll be reviewing that next week. And if you have seen those already and you want to share your thoughts, get in touch with on our Facebook and our Twitter. Or if you want to share your thoughts on what we've already reviewed, what Danny and I have talked about this week, get in touch. That's all we have time for. So all that's left for me to do this evening is thank you very much, Danny.
Thanks, Jim.
And thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another show. But for now, until then, goodbye.
Bye.